Hi, this is Keiko from Brooklyn Shoe Space. Today for Shoe Talks, we are inviting Tim of Title New York. It is a sandal company that is made up in New Rochelle, just 30 minutes outside of the city. I found their company just through New York Times article actually. And I didn't know, and it is amazing what they're doing. They have evolved since as well, using different materials. I would love to hear how they started and where they're going to go. So let's see where they are right now. I think they have joined me. Let's see. Okay, maybe not yet. Thank you for joining, guys. Hi, Mar. Hi, David. Okay, I might have to call him in. Let me see. Where's everybody from? La Japonese 01. I wonder where everybody's visiting from. Please put in comments. Hi, Allison. No. Tianhen. How are you? It's so great. I think it's fantastic that Title New York is bringing manufacturing stateside. It's not easy. Oh, there they are. I think they joined us. So here we go. Brooklyn, represent. England, thank you for joining from England. Okay, Title New York. Call them in.
Hey, Kiko.
Hello. Hi, I'm Keiko. It's
How are
kind
you?
of pronounced like a cake and a O. Hi, Tim.
Oh,
Can you hear
cool.
me?
Thank you so much for having me. I
Yeah, no,
apologize for the tournament.
thank you so much for joining us. I know it's like midday. I know it's not like, everybody's busy. So thank you for joining us,
Oh
taking
my
time out
God,
of your
it's
day, everybody.
it's
How are you during COVID, and how have you had to close down a little bit? What is your situation
yeah. So
in
we
New Rochelle?
we had New Rochelle was for those who are familiar with it. That was pretty much the first place
First,
that
yes.
COVID really hit in a big way. So it was a bit scary at first for us.
Mm-hmm.
We were outside of the quarantine zone. I think there was a lot of confusion over what the quarantine zone meant, and it felt very much like people were walking around in hazmat suits or something like that, and that ended up not being the case. But
Right.
we had we had an interesting time with it. We ended up shutting down a little bit earlier than when Governor Cuomo gave out the
Yeah.
guidance,
Yes.
mainly because we were just concerned about our own employee safety, and
Mm-hmm.
nothing was worth jeopardizing that.
Mm-hmm.
So we took a proactive step there. We had the ability to get into the factory during the course of COVID, just because we do warehouse there. We fulfill orders out of there, and
Mm-hmm.
we have to maintain the machine. So
Right.
we were, and what's nice about the way that we're set up
Mm-hmm.
is it's very much what we kind of call the factory of the future, where it's semi-automated. So
Oh, okay.
it's not full automation, but we're naturally set up to be well over 6 feet apart from each other. Each station
Okay.
is closer to 40 to 50 feet apart.
Uh-huh.
And we run our shifts really on four people on the production floor at a time. So
Oh, wow. Okay.
we're reopened. We're in full production.
Mm-hmm.
Again, for us, we're able to maintain and keep our own facility as clean as we need to.
Yeah.
For us, it was really about just implementing mask procedures, and we ordered face shields for everybody, and
Mm-hmm.
just some sort of hygiene related SOP
Right.
stuff that we had to put in. But based on the way we were set up from the start, we really didn't have to think how we manufacture. And so
Oh, wow, that's great.
it's been a cool lesson out of this. If you can
Yes.
call anything cool that's come out of this, I think there's been great dialogue
Uh-huh.
and some learnings that have come out of it.
Right.
And so that's where we're at.
And it's a confirmation that you're doing great. Like you're doing good.
We
So
think
that's
so,
good.
yeah.
Yes, that's good.
Yeah.
And everybody's still healthy.
Everybody's healthy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. That is great.
We made sure that nobody that was reliant on public transportation felt that they needed to come in. For the first few weeks, it was strictly voluntary,
right,
to come in. We didn't want anybody doing anything that they didn't feel comfortable with.
Right.
Yeah.
Got it. Well, do you mind going back in time a little bit and introducing what you do, how you got into shoe business, how you started the factory with, I think, your brother?
Yeah.
That's what I read back in 2018 article. So it's a little old, dated info that I have. Yes, please tell us like how it started.
So he's out in LA now, and I'm pretty much solely running the day-to-day with our management team. But he's still very much involved on strategy and sort of back end stuff. So our history is that we grew up in the shoe business. Our father he's kind of the architect of Nine West's international business for about 25 years. So we were always around it. We ended up getting into footwear on the sourcing and production end of things. And over the course of about 10 years for me, 15 for Tommy in the industry, we each took a ton of trips to Asia, Africa, Mexico. And, the common theme through all of it was you had a bunch of forces that were coming to a head. One of them was that we always felt, we felt a little uncomfortable when you'd go overseas and you'd see what the standard of living was there, and then thinking about where this end product was going and how there was this downward price pressure. And it's not like, as we know with inflation, it's not like the materials were getting less expensive, which meant there's only really one input that was going to get less expensive, and that was the labor.
Yeah.
So that was something that once you it's like one of those brain worms where once it gets into your head, you can't unsee any of it. You can't, it starts to change your whole outlook on your job and your career.
Yeah.
And then with those opposing price forces also, we saw it from a humanitarian level, and then we saw it from a business level too, that this was a problem across the board. Right. You were going to have a place that you got to where, you want upward mobility. Yeah. And you also know that, there's only a finite number of humans on the face of the earth. There's only a finite number of continents. And so this wasn't a path that had a good ending, no matter what. Right. So we thought that we'd get out in front of that a little bit. And the way we saw it was that, there was around 2013 was when we started to hear a lot about Made in the USA again. Yeah. The Department of Defense was putting out a big to-do about it. And, New Balance got a huge contract, some Timberland brands like this. But that was the reality, was that it was largely DoD contracts that was American footwear. Right. And so we saw a white space there. And so we started to think about what could we do. Flip-flops became interesting to us because we knew that in order to prove this, we weren't going to be able to build out some massive factory with stitching lines and multiple floors like what we saw in Asia. So we're like, what can we manufacture that sort of hasn't been innovated in a while and that we could do with lower inputs and try to figure out a way to do it more, semi-automated. That's where we landed on flip-flops, because they really hadn't been touched. It was all EVA. It was all a lot of like the stuff that you see in the store, die cut. And so we thought aesthetically there was some things we could do that hadn't been done that we couldn't figure out why hadn't been done yet.
Okay.
Other than just the consumer wasn't asking for it, or it's like that complacency of that segment. So that's where we went with it. And you know, like I said, we run our floor on 4 people. You really have 2 components, an upper and a bottom, and then we have a patented digital printing process. And that allowed us to really rethink how flip-flops are made and how, you know, how to cut down waste. And so that was the thought process with why flip-flops, why we made here. We just felt like it was coming back here anyways eventually.
Right.
I think what we're learning now is like it's one of those things where you can see around a corner.
Yeah.
Sometimes you see around a corner and you're a mile ahead, and that's kind of what happened for us. Is the market wasn't quite ready yet when we launched, but the market's ready now. You know, I think people, for a while we had a problem with marketing to a degree because the story kind of solved a lot of problems. We were hiring veterans, we were community building, we were bringing manufacturing back, we were making better, we were making more ethically. And so that's a lot. That's a mouthful.
It is. Yeah, it is.
And after the 2016 election, nationalism became politicized.
Yes.
And so then Made in America became something that was appended to a political party, which was then problematic too, because we just really weren't in it for that. We didn't want to, be there. We wanted to be autonomous because we thought that this didn't belong to politics. This belonged to what was right, and that's making local. Right. So it's been cool to watch it evolve because then people started to understand it as a sustainability story. Yes. Around 2018, that started to become understood there, even though we had sustainability language in our business plan in 2013. Right. And then since COVID hit and supply chain disruption really hit. Yes, I was going to ask about that. Yeah. People are now understanding our model, not just as sustainable, but as a resilient model also. Right. Oh, that's wonderful, isn't it? But do you have mentors for your factory? I know you've been going back and forth to Asia, so you've seen a lot of factories, but when you were opening a factory, say, what equipment to get? Was it already available in the market, or did you have to kind of innovate a little bit? It's a mix. So the machinery that we use to make our outsoles, the biggest piece of it by volume, that existed from a German manufacturer. Same people that made the machinery for like Birkenstock and for a ton of other direct injection applications and things like that. The machines we use to press our straps are kind of like, it's another German company that it's a common injection molding apparatus. The printers that we use are primarily used for large format printing for signage, but we were able to manipulate those in order to be able to print on our flip-flops, which was a nice breakthrough also. And then further to that, we do use a machine, our washing machine. We originally had to use a solvent-based dry cleaning type of machine, but that was problematic for us because you had a solvent. Okay. Wait, what's a washing machine used for? So if you think of how our outsoles are made, it's like a 42 station waffle maker is the best way to say it. Yeah, I think we saw a photo and we posted on our Instagram. It's like a ring. Yeah, exactly. And I think we have one where somebody's demolding a flip-flop. Yeah. Yeah. So that's it. And so you have to essentially think about that there's like a PAM or a cooking spray that would go on it. Right. Very, very low level, but it still needs to come off in order to be able to print on it, and just has a little bit of a residue. Right. So originally, and this goes back to the innovation, when deindustrialization happened in the States, what a lot of people don't fully understand, or they, you know, they do once they start to think about it from a logic and systems standpoint.
Yeah, yeah.
Is there's nothing, whether it's a community center or a community factory or a factory in a community, there's an ecosystem that goes with all that. And I think we're seeing that in Manhattan now, is when office buildings are vacated, there's janitorial services, there's all these things that go along with that.
Yeah.
And so similarly, when American footwear manufacturing left, the ecosystem that supported it, material makers, machine makers, tool makers, fabric suppliers, all that largely went with it.
Yeah.
So we had to think about, so a lot of things didn't move forward then. They when we offshored them, the business kind of hit pause in terms of innovation on how things were done, because we were just looking to do them cheaper, not necessarily more efficiently or more,
or better,
sustainably or anything like that.
Yeah.
So what we found out was that the only way at the time, the only way to get this, the cooking spray, for lack of a better word, it's called mold release agent.
Mold release,
off,
yes.
Off of the flip flops was to use solvent.
Yes.
So we were doing that. Another problem with that process, though, is it's very high water dependent also.
Right.
So we were just looking at our water usage. We're getting all our ducks in a row. We're submitting our documentation for our B Corp certification.
Ooh,
next week.
That is exciting. That's a hard process. Yeah.
Our sustainability manager just called me right before this call and said, what happened at the end of 2016, because our water usage fell off a cliff. And that was when we moved to this new process where we took a parts washer that they use for like washing engines and things like that in Michigan and wherever they do automotive. And we basically got inspired by the utensil rack of a dishwasher. And they fabricated a utensil rack to go into this washer. And it's a quick 5-minute high temperature, high pressure wash that takes off the minimal residue, and we get an even better print result than we had at the time. So
that's great.
So there's some innovation about repurposing machinery that hadn't been used in this way. Yeah. And similarly with the printing process, where we can digitally print. And what's really cool about digitally printing is your ability to recreate art and things like that is much higher. We're about to do another collaboration with Jonathan Cohen's studio in a couple weeks. And we're taking his drawings and putting them onto the flip-flops, and they're very faithful. And so that was a really cool breakthrough for us too, because the other thing that does is you have very high minimum order quantities in Asia.
Yes.
And in order, I say Asia only because that's pretty much exclusively where flip-flops are made now. Yeah. Aside from Havaianas in Brazil, but you have these super high MOQs. Yeah. And what that does is, and I know this from sitting in buying meetings with buyers and suggesting buys, and I think myself in hindsight for it now, is if you get 400 pairs of orders on a style, but you need 1,500 to get it made, 9 times out of 10, they're going to commit to those 1,500 pairs and take them as inventory. And what we know now, particularly in this sort of like, this sort of look under the hood that's happening and this real like deep soul searching that's going on in fashion, is we're seeing all these statistics. 70% of goods end up in a landfill within a year of production. Right. So, and a lot of that is at the behest of, we have this broken buying cycle. Yes. Where we force buyers the only reason is because the supply chain's on the other side of the world. We're forcing buyers to make trend decisions 6 months out in an ever increasingly faster world. Yeah. And so where buyers are making, not at their own fault, worse decisions only because the trends and the zeitgeists are moving at lightning speed now. Right. And so your odds of having bad inventory are higher than ever. So what this does for us is, by not having to set up screens like you would, and why those MOQs are so high, is we digitally print. You have less printing waste in the process, less ink
Mm-hmm.
used,
Mm-hmm.
and you can run much lower runs on it. You can run
Quantity.
as low as
Mm-hmm.
24. I mean, we need to do them higher for efficiencies,
Yeah,
but theoretically, we can make a single pair.
that is
And so,
great. So you can do collaborations. You can also
exactly.
do, yeah. Do you do white labels as well? Like, do
So,
you do brands come to you and ask to
yeah,
make it?
we're actually, for any of your viewers that are familiar with Simple Brand, that was a sneaker in the late
Mm-hmm.
90s,
Mm-hmm.
we're doing a cool collaboration with them. They're having a nice little renaissance now, too. We've done some things with like Theory.
Yeah.
Um, we've done things with like Ace Hotel, and
Mm-hmm.
so like it depends, but yeah, we have that capability.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we've been really focused on building the brand out because
Yeah.
we thought that, you know, originally when we started, people said, how is there a New York flip-flop brand? And, you know, we have a say in saying, well, you obviously don't know that New York has some great beaches, between Jacob Riis and the
Yeah.
Rockaways and all
Yeah.
these things.
Yeah.
But even besides that, the story of flip-flops at a beach had been told.
Mm-hmm.
And what hadn't been told is particularly as athleisure has been having this moment and isn't going away.
Yeah.
And I think as we move towards a work from home environment that will only proliferate further,
Yeah.
flip flops are going to have a bigger say in people's wardrobes
Mm-hmm.
because we've been casualizing for so long now.
Mm-hmm.
And so for us, it was like, well, how do New Yorkers wear flip flops? Because we wear them to yoga, we wear them to the gym, we wear them to the bathhouse.
Right.
We wear them walking. And so that's what we focused on is let's
Mm.
tell these stories about people going to the climbing gyms or you know, going
Mm-hmm.
to their yoga studios or working from
Mm-hmm.
home.
Mm-hmm.
And we wanted to build a brand around that, around
Mm-hmm.
the vibe of New York, the
Mm-hmm.
diversity of New York.
Mm-hmm.
We thought that was something that really hadn't been addressed with flip flops either.
Yeah.
Um, that was, you know, flip flops in general are a sort of non-diverse category based
Right.
the
Right.
product itself, and
Mm-hmm.
very much a bronze sort of blonde wrapped in the flag America beach, you know, type of thing.
Right.
And so we wanted to tell a story that was took flip flops out of that realm and put
Mm-hmm.
them more into the New York realm, and
City.
we see
Mm.
New York as a really good, you know, it's a better cross section of the country than pretty much
Mm.
anywhere in the country.
Mm-mm. Is
Uh,
that also did it influence your name as well? How did the name come about?
so
That
we our
uh,
original name was Homegrown for Good because we
uh-huh.
weren't. My brother and I did not go to school for marketing, clearly by that name. Um, and we had some reasons behind it, but it was a lot of like altruism and not a lot of like
Right.
marketing thought.
Right.
Um, we recognized pretty quickly though that could be a good holding company name, but that was not a brand,
Right.
particularly not one for flip flops. And so we started to look around, and what was kind of interesting anecdote was while we were doing all our trademarking and all that, we were in a conversation or an email exchange with a gentleman who owned the URL title.com. And we ended up needing to have a geographical mark on it because there was a couple other flip-flop brands, very much, or brands that had flip-flop under their trademark
Mm-hmm.
or footwear and were
Yeah.
protected. So we had to have a differentiator in there. But it was also at the same time that Jay-Z was buying Tidal, the music streaming from the Scandinavian company. And so like,
Oh.
you know, so it was really interesting because of course, right after we launched, the announcement came. I mean, it was within weeks. So it was a pretty funny set of events that happened there. But we really just thought that Tidal was a cool name. It spoke to the ocean. We thought it
Ocean. Yeah.
spoke to a wave, a tide of things changing.
Yeah.
And then we liked having New York in it. And
Mm-hmm.
initially we did get challenged, like I said, of, well, who wears flip flops in New York?
In New York.
You
Yeah.
know, all these types of things. But, you know, we weren't afraid of that. we would
Right.
rather challenge norms
Right.
than not, because if
Right.
you're just going with the flow, then what are we doing here?
Right. Right. Yeah, you're ahead of the tide. Um,
That's it.
question. So where you are located in New Rochelle, how did you choose that location
Yes.
and not anywhere else in the country? I feel like it could be actually somewhere else, say
Well,
California or
yeah, and that's the idea actually. So
mm,
we were based. I was based in Hoboken. My brother was in Manhattan. And so we knew we weren't necessarily vacating here. We were looking at Scranton, Pennsylvania, largely because of property costs
right,
per square foot costs.
right.
But what we also recognize is because of that issue with buyers
Yeah.
and the whole concept of having to like explain to them what the benefit was of being able to buy closer, not having to tie up those open to buy dollars 6 months out. We were like, we're gonna have to take them there to get them really drunk on this idea that would make them change the way they operate. And so then Scranton wasn't realistic anymore. And the other thing that we knew was we wanted to be on the floor figuring this out. We needed,
Right.
so
So
Tommy
you,
and I, for the whole first year, me for the first 2 full years of production, I was on the production floor from like, 9 to 5, and then I was in the office from 5 to midnight,
right, right.
and that's how we did, because we wanted to make sure that every process in that facility, we could vouch for ourselves that we would
Right.
do it. We would do that job. We've done that job. We know it's not asking too much of anybody. We know what the physical demands are, and not just from doing it for 20 minutes, but doing full shifts, doing 12-hour shift, busting those orders out the door. And that was important to us. There's a lot of, and we're seeing it now. There's all these conversations around labor and wage suppression and all these different things. And that was really where our mind space was for it. So we needed to be there.
Yeah. So it was close enough that you could commute.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's a train station just 1.5 miles away from the factory. Actually, a little bit less than that. So that was all really important to us. It really came back down to real estate and what was available with loading docks as to why we ended up in New Rochelle. But there happened to be an old tambourine factory that was laid out almost like the way we said it was. There's a couple factories in China that we loved in terms of how they were laid out.
Okay.
And this one happened to be really close to that. So it wasn't quite turnkey, but it was really, really close. And so that's how we ended up.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
How many people work in the factory, and how do you find the talent, or do you train people?
We train
inside. That's great.
Our motto is we don't create jobs, we create careers. We believe in that. We run our shifts. There's 2 shifts. They're run on 4 people each. And so the total team size right now is 13. And that's for our design studio, management, and factory teams. So it's all done really efficiently, but not overly burdened. Nobody's, and what we do is we cross-train everybody. I'm a huge believer in soup to nuts training for everybody, because I just think when you get siloed, you stop look, it's no different than what we're seeing right now in a ton of different conversations in this country. Is individualism is a good thing to have for your own personal drive, but when you get too siloed and too much in this realm of individualism, you lose the sense of community. Right? And so that's the big dialogue that's happening now. And it's a similar thing when you think about the workplaces. As everybody's siloed off from each other, you start thinking that only your job is the one that really counts, and you don't start to understand how everything is interconnected,
related,
and how your role impacts others. So
Yeah.
we cross-train everybody. That allows us to keep a low head count.
Mm-hmm.
And it allows us to flow to where the need is based on where we are
Right.
at a given
Right.
production period.
Right.
So yeah, that's our team.
Yeah, that is so great. I heard that recently you have switched or kept on innovating the
Yep.
material and you're using castor seed oil. Was
So
it? No.
we're moving so fast that
Okay.
we've moved on from castor.
Oh.
But castor was, so we launched our first renewable formulation in December. We got, so a lot of what's important for people to understand is as much as it's really great, some of the things and the technologies that are out there, there's, as I'm sure they know, there's a ton of greenwashing going on too. So
Mm-hmm.
particularly with the algae-based footwear that we're
Mm-hmm.
hearing about, a lot of that is the filler. So
Right.
you have a petrochemical material, and what's going on with a lot of those algae products that you're seeing that made with algae, the great majority of them are using algae as the filler. So there's only about, and that can only be 5% of the formulation before it starts to compromise the total formulation. Unless you're replacing the carbon in the petrochemical chain. That's what we went after instead of the filler. So a lot of those products out there are somewhere between 1% and 5% renewable, even though they're saying that they're made with algae.
Yeah.
It's a bit egregious.
Yeah.
So we know some benchmarks through some conversations we've had with some science teams out in California, the algae sector out there. And we know about what we need to hit to get to full biodegradability, which is our first benchmark. Compostability, we'd love to get there, but the reality is right now that there's hardly any infrastructure in the States that can handle composting of the industrial sort. It's around 2% of the materials that are made that are industrially compostable. We actually have the facilities and the infrastructure for. Wow. So for us, the most important thing was, how do we make sure this breaks down in a landfill? We have a recycling program that we're about to roll out to make sure that we have a place or we have a way to reclaim from customers if they get them to us. But if they do end up in a landfill, we want to make sure that they break down.
Right.
So we wanted to attack the petrochemical chain. So the first thing that was available to us was castor oil.
Yeah.
It's a great material. Allbirds uses it in their soles, along with some other things like sugarcane. For us, it became problematic because of our supply chain. We were sourcing it from India. Everything else that we do is sourced in the US. And so it was just like catch-22, where the best part of our formulation was now throwing our sustainability off. And so we went to town. Our material supplier in Missouri is phenomenal. They've been the greatest partners through this. It took us a while to find them, back to our earlier point.
Yeah.
And so we have an environmentalist on their team.
Wow.
Who does all the lab work.
Uh-huh.
And so he was really interested in us because we're down to release formulations and move on to the next best one before our marketing catches up to it, which is why.
Right. I didn't know. That's great. That's great. You're always innovating.
We would rather have a higher percentage of a renewability in our soles than what we're advertising. So the opposite of greenwashing. Yeah. And because if somebody wants to test our soles, we'd rather them know that they got more for their money than less. Right. So right now, what we're manufacturing, so that was 13% renewable, which is high, like I said, compared to all those algae. We are now, we switched over to an even cooler renewable carbon source, and that is domestic source. And they're sourcing it from plant biomass, forest biomass, animal waste, and municipal waste. So it can. So the idea is that it's malleable, and you can go. So like the first batch that we had was sourced from excess soybeans that were
Uh-huh.
sitting in grain mills in the Midwest because
Uh-huh.
Chinese demand
Yep.
for American soy fell through the floor.
Yeah.
So there was all this soy just sitting out there in grain mills, and so the this resource that we use to source this renewable carbon now, that's where they grabbed it from. So the idea is that now we can go solve multiple problems at once. So we can
Yeah.
solve problems of excess resource,
Yeah.
and then put that into our formerly exclusively petrochemical formulation and start to replace that. So we're
Wow.
now at 20% renewable in our outsole formulations,
Wow.
and
Uh-huh.
we're at 22% on our black, because our black pigment has an additional renewable element to us. So
Uh-huh.
we're in the process of beginning the application to be USDA bio-preferred.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And then we have our next test formulation comes next week, and that's to get us to between 24 and 26%
Wow.
renewable. And then from
Uh-huh.
there, our next benchmark is to get to 33%.
Wow. And it's
So,
like in the matter of months, you've kind of
yeah,
been, yeah, improving that. That is like amazing.
we to kind of look at it as the way that, there's a big argument out there that everything should be open sourced, and
Mm-hmm.
that patents are actually, they can hold us back in certain ways. And I'm not advocating one way or the other on that. But I will say that our mentality as it relates to anything with sustainability is that we would rather take that open source type of mindset. And as soon as we can get it out, we're going to get it out. And so what we're doing is saying, rather than saying, let's take a traditional marketing approach and then only release formulations to dovetail in with our marketing initiatives
Right.
or campaigns,
Yeah.
we'd rather have some more ambiguous marketing that allows us to continue to innovate and get the customer the best possible product that we're able to make as quickly as we
Mm-hmm.
possibly can. Because
Wow.
for us,
That's
it's just
great.
not worth
Mm-hmm.
making things because we have marketing invested in it if it's not the best that we could possibly make.
Right. Right. Wow, this is great. And it also relates back to your B Corp application. I hope
For
I'm
sure.
crossing fingers for you. It's a very hard process. I know. And then also to sustain, keep that
Yeah,
certified.
if
It's a
there's
lot of
any
work.
if there
Mm-hmm.
are any brands listening right now, get a consultant. we know a good one,
Yeah.
because it makes all the difference in the world to have that person with experience to walk us through. But we've had a really great time going through it. For us, it was the B Corp process has been amazing because we have all this data, but we hadn't really had something to rally around to really organize it all. And the B
Mm-hmm.
Corp process almost pulls out of you an organizational process. And it puts these trackers into place that are then really easy to update quarterly or whatever. And so we're really excited about it. We've got a pretty high score going in. We're pretty confident that the it's about where we're going to land on it.
Yeah.
But we're setting our target really high on it. So
That's great.
hopefully we make it there.
I'm looking forward to hearing the news.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you expand your offerings to other styles? Say, for example, like a slide?
So we're actually actively in the process. We're working with another group of footwear makers also on a potential collaboration on a slide. No promises on if, when, or anything like that.
Yeah.
But it's on our mind. I think for us, what was most important was to, our thing was make one thing better when we started, and we haven't tapped out, even close to what we can do with flip flops, and so we really wanted to focus on that, get our house in order. We're in our 5th year, which is, that's
Congratulations. Yeah.
that's when things start to normalize a bit for most companies. So, you know, we're starting to look at it, but we just wanted to make sure that we were super tight on what we were doing now,
Yeah.
before we got over our skis on anything else.
Got it. Got it. And one day it'll be great if we can have a little peek at your
Oh yeah,
factory, because
yeah,
I hear it's so clean and it's like it's almost minimalist almost.
yeah. That's a good way to say it. You can see when you walk into the door, you can see every process happening standing right there. You
Wow.
barely have to go anywhere. It's one just sort of it's about that area where the production's all handled, about 6,000 square feet. About 30-foot ceiling, so it's just big and open and
Wow.
airy.
Uh-huh.
It's there's 4 skylights. I mean, this was all
Uh-huh.
important to us. Was
Yes.
this has to be a place where, you know, factories, aside from the A-level factories
Mm-hmm.
overseas,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're just not places that anybody that shops in America would want to work.
Right.
They're just not.
I hear you.
And even for as pitiful as our minimum wage is in this country, almost any job that's minimum wage would be more desirable than the places that people are forced to work and made to feel like they're fortunate to work in a lot of
Right.
places overseas. So for us, that was critical. You know, we
Yeah.
wanted to pay salaries
Yeah.
to a good portion of our factory employees. We wanted to set them on career paths. We wanted to train
Mm-hmm.
them how to be
Mm-hmm.
managers. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that goes back to your earlier question about did we have to train? We trained everybody because they're just, like I said, there's no ecosystem
Right.
for footwear. And we're making things differently than
Yes.
they've been
It's
made.
not traditional. Yeah,
No.
absolutely.
So
But
that's why veterans were such a great, you know, sort of boon for us. Is one, there's a promise that's not being upheld to veterans.
mm-hmm.
Two, veterans tend to get politicized, and they're actually they're so representative of our melting pot of the
Mm-hmm.
country and
Mm-hmm.
our cross section of the country, that was important to us. Was,
Yeah.
well, hey, we'll step in and fulfill the obligation that's not being fulfilled. And
And
so, and they, you know, veterans they interface with high tech
mm-hmm.
computer based machinery all the time. And that's essentially what
Right.
we have.
Right.
So
Right.
the mentality was already there. And then for
That is
establishing
great.
culture on
Mm-hmm.
the floor, it was a
Mm-hmm.
great
Yeah,
move for us.
that is so great.
Yeah.
And then, so you were saying first 2 years you were on the floor. Now you don't have to be there, and everybody is all smooth sailing.
Yeah, it was important to us. You know, if you're going to career path, you got to get the bosses off the floor. You have to
Yes.
give autonomy. I'm not a micromanager. I don't believe in it, aside from project basis or when people ask you to, or when you need
Mm-hmm.
to step in because something's going awry. But otherwise, you know, let people fall down, let people make mistakes, just make sure that they know that you're there for them.
Mm-hmm.
And
That is
that was
great.
important. And that was part of the whole training of the soup to nuts for everybody. Is
Yeah.
anytime that I'm in the factory, I'm giving them full business updates from the partnerships, why we took them, why it impacts them, if we're putting a special color in, why we're doing a
Mm-hmm.
special color.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So
Um,
everybody's a part of
Everybody
the
understands the
decision. Yeah.
business, because
Yeah.
then when an order gets handed down to the factory, they feel connected to it.
Yes.
They feel like they feel invested in it.
Yeah.
And
That
then
is.
the other thing that's important with that too is I don't want anybody to feel like because they're making straps today that their only career path is to be in the factory. Well, what if
Right.
what if there's something we don't know about them, that they're really good with finance or whatever, you know, because
Right.
these are veterans that have leveraged GI bills and things like that and gone to
Yeah.
school and you
Yeah.
know, and so you know, we want to make sure that there's pathways that extend beyond the production floor also.
That is wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're really like you're making your title factory like family.
That's
Yeah.
the goal. That's the
Yeah.
goal.
What's your favorite thing about owning the factory and least favorite?
Most favorite is honestly, it's the team that we've built. I I genuinely like love everybody in our factory and on our team. We've had a really low attrition rate overall. We had some early on. A lot of it had to do with just getting processes right, and you know, I think there's like 3 of the people have left to chase loves of their lives, so that's can't really, that's fine.
Compete with that. Yeah.
So, but I mean, it's just working with our team and building something. I mean, it's the most rewarding thing in the world. And I think that the reward, there's a lot of pressure that comes with being responsible for the livelihoods of everybody. Yeah. That's probably my least favorite thing on one hand. Yeah. Only because I love them all so much and we all are so tight and I don't want to let them down ever. Yeah. That pressure can be suffocating, but it's also equally the most rewarding.
Right. Understand. And I think I think with the pandemic, being able to plow through it, and I feel like it gives confidence as well into the building and into the company. You know, I feel like that is great that, you know, it's a confirmation.
For sure.
Yeah, you guys have a good model.
For sure.
Where would you guys want to be? What do you want to be doing in 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, so you touched on it earlier about like how this idea could be kind of anywhere, right? It could be in California. So our feeling is that, you know, we don't want a gigafactory. We don't. Early on, we were like, oh, we'll take the building across the street. And then as we started to really suss this model out, what's important to us is community building. Yeah. And like similarly, as if you're just siloing off individuals, as you get bigger and these factories and these companies turn into essentially campuses, right, with a gate, you're sort of gating yourself off from the community also. So that started to really impact our thought process. And then we said, on top of that, for career pathing, there's a really cool opportunity for employee ownership that comes with the idea of expansion via similarly sized factories as what we have that go to the population bases that would support it. So like we have a distribution center via UPS in California. And so that would be the first, you know, somewhere very close to there would be one of the first places that we looked at next. And, you know, we're in a building that basically looks like we're on a mixed street. So it's part commercial and part residential. Oh, all the commercial buildings are former residential buildings and kind of have that architecture. And we believe in that. You know, we believe in that sort of downtown LA manufacturing type of vibe too, where it's small production. Yeah. And so we have a shade under 10,000 square feet, and that's about the size that we need to run a factory. And so we would do something similar, hopefully, somewhere in the Midwest or somewhere in Los Angeles, probably in that area. Then we'd start looking at, you know, probably
on the coast, down on the east. Yeah,
exactly. Potentially our other distribution center for the East Coast is in Kentucky. So maybe it'd be something there, or somewhere close by there. So that's our mentality, is go where the demand is. And that's an important thing, even as we look at international also. Yeah. And that sort of draws on, you know, tying it back to the original question of how do we get into this is our father's model that he built for Nine West was, you know, don't have Nine West employees go run things in other countries. Have people who know the culture run it. Find the best people locally to run it. And that's our thought process too, is if it's Australia or it's Indonesia or wherever if it's Japan, then we would want to license the idea out basically. And perhaps somebody from one of our current factories would then go start it there. And help get it off the ground. But then we would have this idea where you can create manufacturing locally across the board.
That is so great. Do you also have like schools come and visit you? Youth
We
near.
just started to get into that. We were talking about programming some of that out this fall, which is now on hold.
On hold,
Um,
yeah.
but we've had, we do want to work with local schools.
Mm-hmm.
We want to work with the PS system in New
Yeah.
York City also.
Yeah.
These were all things that we had kicking around our heads
Mm-hmm.
before,
Yeah.
that are even more important to us now,
Yeah.
given the conversations around racial
Yes.
injustice. That's all.
Yeah.
For us, we see things as intersectionality.
Yeah.
And so sustainability, local manufacturing, all of it. There's a great report that the Alliance for American Manufacturing did last year
Yeah.
on deindustrialization and the flight of industrialization in the U.S. and its impact on Black communities. So all
Right.
this is really important to us, and why the
Mm-hmm.
community-based manufacturing, local manufacturing, we see as tied to all of this.
Yes.
And so, we
Also
want
to
to
see, sorry, to see where things are made, how things
exactly,
are made, just kind of
exactly,
like similar. I don't see a difference in like, say, like the farm, farm to table
no,
concept, like kids didn't
that's
know where the
exactly
food
right.
came from. Same thing.
That's exactly right. Farm to table started this whole local manufacturing for it to make sense to people on a sustainability measure. Like the
Yeah.
farm to table food movement
Mm-hmm.
started it, and now
Yeah.
it's kind of making its way into fashion too.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we totally believe in that. We have some cool programming coming up with Marist College,
Mm-hmm.
and Johns Hopkins also.
Wow.
So
Mm-hmm.
we're definitely interested in that. It's not that we think we're the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's just we want the norms to be challenged.
Yes.
We want people to start thinking differently and just understand that there's different models out there. Ours might not be perfect. It might not be the best one. We'll be the first ones to say it, but it's different,
It's
and that's what
different.
we want
Yeah.
people to just think about.
Yes, absolutely. I think also there's no one thing that can resolve everything,
Yeah.
100%. And like the attitude where you have improving all the time, I think that is just one step at a time, but it's like always going towards the better. So thank you for what you do.
Oh, we agree. We
Really.
think that that's actually like, people have become marketing was such a print-based original concept that was very much rooted in catchy phrases and things like that. Now what we're seeing is that there's a higher level of accountability
Yeah.
and transparency required, which we fully endorse. And we think that brands have for too long been too afraid of telling the customer that they're imperfect, and that their marketing campaigns and efforts have been around talking about how, perfectly ethical they are and perfectly sustainable and perfect.
Yeah.
And we just don't buy into any of that. We
Yeah.
we want to be in a place where we're saying we're doing everything we can with the resources we have at our disposal to do the best job and deliver the best product to you in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us where we're falling short of that, because we're going to do our damnedest to improve on it. But just know that we're our own worst critics,
Right.
at every turn. And we think
Right.
that we think that it's on companies to lead with that messaging,
Yeah.
and be more vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And once that happens, we hope that the customers will meet them halfway and say, we don't expect you to, we just
Right.
want you to be honest with us.
Yes.
And I think if we can get to a place of honesty in our marketing
Mm-hmm.
and our communications, that,
Mm-hmm.
what we'll see is, you have people complaining about cancel culture and call out culture. And to me, it's the answer to that is don't give a reason to be called out. Just do it the right way and be transparent and be ethical.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my goodness, that's so great. Do you always wear Title footwear, Titles flip-flops? Is that like your meeting shoes?
I have every color for sure. Most of the time you can catch me in them. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're my house slippers. They're, I've recently got into biomechanics a lot, mobility and things like that. So I now don't wear, I only wear toe socks, which makes wearing flip-flops with socks
Easier.
really easy. Yeah. I'm trying to get that to trend in fashion. I'm kind of on my own on that one, but yeah, so that's proliferated my flip-flop wearing into winter months also now too.
Right. Do you also do children's flip-flops, like little ones with the back straps as well?
We haven't gotten there yet, but that's certainly a space for us to expand into, and a category for us to go into. There's demand for sure.
Yeah.
But we're just not there yet.
Got it. It's so exciting to see what you're gonna do next and where you're gonna go.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking your time.
Thank you for having us.
One day I would love to come and visit you once,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know if it's not a travel ban, but I'm just trying to be a little cautious with going places. But I would love to come and visit one day.
We had an event lined up that was supposed to happen end of March that got canceled. We're going to have a bunch of people come in and see it. So we will definitely keep you in the loop on that. And if that doesn't work out, we'll get you out there on a one-to-one basis anyways.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, not a problem.
All right. So I will let you go for today. Thank you so much for an amazing conversation.
Absolutely. Hope everybody stays safe and sane. Yes. And enjoy the rest of this weather.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks so much.
Right. Bye.
Bye.